I want to talk about 3 in-person social engineering techniques that can be used for reconnaissance. And these will all be techniques that you've either seen yourself before or inadvertently partaken in, although you possibly haven't been thinking about it in the social engineering context. Let's take the first one, and I'm sure you've seen this one. People with information on screens in a place that you can observe. It often looks just like this. Someone sitting on a train with a laptop open. You might be standing behind them and you can see exactly what is on their screen. This is what we refer to as shoulder surfing. Looking over someone's shoulder and observing their personal information. So have a think about the sort of information that might be visible to casual observers. So passwords would be an obvious one. You particularly see this on smartphones when people are punching a PIN number into the screen. If it's just 4 or 6 digits, that's something that's quite easy for a casual observer to notice and remember. But of course, you may also see information on the screen that shouldn't be exposed elsewhere. That could be sensitive corporate documents, employee records, or confidential communications. Things that are meant to remain the domain of the person operating the device, yet are easily observable by someone simply looking over their shoulder. Now, of course, that's one way of shoulder surfing, physically looking over the shoulder by a third party. But that third party may also go so far as to snap a photo with a smartphone. It's quite easy to be very covert doing that. And if it's not an observer with a smartphone, what about security cameras? What about people at a distance with binoculars or a telescope? Have a think about all the different things that might be behind you over your shoulder that could have a line of sight through to your screen. Now, in terms of places at risk, obviously public places are going to be high risk. So a lot of people like to work at cafes. That's got a lot of people walking through it who could be observing a screen. We just looked at public transport, trains, buses, places where there's a high density of people. Even airplanes where you're sitting for a long period of time, possibly working away. Could the person behind you actually see what's on your screen, and might that be information of a sensitive nature? So shoulder surfing is fundamentally simple, and you've all seen it or inadvertently partaken in it. And it can be a serious risk in terms of the ability for someone else to observe and perform reconnaissance on what it is that you're doing on the device. Another one that will be very familiar is eavesdropping. How many times have you heard someone talking loudly on a phone in a public place, possibly saying things that really should be said in private? Now that could be anything from placing an order and needing to read out their credit card details, through to discussing a confidential business deal, or sharing other information with colleagues on the phone that shouldn't be audible to third parties. So let's talk more about eavesdropping. And first of all, much of it is a similar risk to shoulder surfing, insofar as it's something occurring in public that really should be kept somewhat more private. Obviously, the threats we're talking about here is anything expressed verbally. Often when you're speaking to a service operator on the phone, you'll be asked for your password. There are various other problems with that implementation of authentication, but it does remain prevalent. Credit cards is the other one I just mentioned. Anything of a sensitive nature is the sort of thing that we don't want to be talking about in a location where eavesdropping could occur. Now, it's not always just in person and picked up by someone else in close proximity either. It can occur on the wire. So now we're talking about a man-in-the-middle type of scenario. What sort of conversations might you have on the phone that could be observed by someone between you and the other party that you're discussing with? So have a think about the non-in-person applications of eavesdropping as well. One more in-person technique to cover here is one that, again, you've probably seen many times before. You may have even helped facilitate. This is one that you see occur in the doors to an office, or possibly an elevator entry, or maybe even at a security gate. And it's what we refer to as tailgating. Now, when we talk about tailgating in this context, we're talking about following an authorized person into an otherwise restricted area. So this is very much the attacker simply latching on to the tail of the victim. So they're literally going to follow them through a door into the office building or past a security point. They're gaining access to a location which they couldn't otherwise do without following someone else through the entry. Now, part of the problem here is it's exploiting this human weakness of helpfulness. If you're the person in front and someone's following you through a doorway, your natural reaction is going to be to hold the door for them. You're not going to want to lock them out. And this is what makes it so effective, because it's hard for the lead person to reject the tailgater. That's not a very socially acceptable behavior. But of course, if the social engineer can successfully tailgate someone into an otherwise secure location, they get access to a whole bunch of different things. So this could be computers. Do they get physical access to machines that they can then extract information from? Photocopiers is another great example. How many times do you find sensitive information left on a corporate photocopier that someone who's managed to tailgate their way into an otherwise secure location can simply pick up and walk away with? Even trash cans are enormously useful. There's one other really neat trick that the social engineer can use when tailgating someone else onto a premise, and it's this. No one suspects the guy in the high visibility vest. Every time you see a workman on site, looking purposeful in a vest and perhaps a hard hat, carrying some tools, possibly with some sort of identification on them, doesn't matter what it is, they've got a badge. This outfit makes them near invisible because you're expecting the person to be unfamiliar. It's not someone that you see in the office every day. So that's the 3 in-person social engineering behaviors. Let's now move on and talk about dumpster diving.